lost all control. Gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She comes with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Paranormal Portal Night Terrors. Once again, I'm your host, Brent Thomas. You're stuck with me again, but I'm glad you're getting stuck here with me. Keeps me company anyway, and it makes me feel a lot less foolish sitting here in front of a microphone. Just knowing that all of you are out there listening to me. Hope you guys are having a great day. Hope it worked out to be a great Monday. I hope you all sent your intentions into it and had a fantastic day. We got dumped on for snow. Once again, we got about 6-ish inches, and it was the heavy kind too. It wasn't even the fluffy fun kind that you just kind of like you move a shovel near it and it just kind of all blows away. This stuff was the heavy stuff, so it was a lot of fun today. Scooping that off the sidewalk, I remembered why I don't like snow. It just reminded me all of a sudden. But it is what it is. It is the winter time. I live in the wrong hemisphere for this, so I can't complain too much. But we've had a pretty gentle winter so far, so I can't complain a whole lot. I guess it's been pretty mild as far as winters go. But I hope you had a wonderful weather wherever you were. Been sitting here in silence for so long I get froggy. It's that winter air. More of what I love about this fine, awesome season. You wake up and it's dark, and you get a little bit of daylight, and then you go to sleep early. It's dark. I don't know. Anyway, I'll quit whining now because that's not why you're here. You're here for the Paranormal Portal Night Terrors, and that's what I'm going to bring you. But the phone lines will be open throughout the course of the show. If you want to call in and share an experience of your very own, 720-923-0500 is the call-in number. Again, 720 923-0500. Thank you, Gemini. That's what I need. It's just a little bit of sympathy, and I'm much better. Just knowing there's that kind of love out there. I mean, I feel better already. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. I do. Don't get me wrong. I think winters are beautiful. They're gorgeous, and it's just like living in a postcard most of the time. When it's looking out the window, it's like living in a postcard. When you're outside in it, it's like living in a very cold postcard. But the minion had a lot of fun out there as I was shoveling, so it was worth it to see that fun and magic in his eyes as he throws about 5,000 snowballs at me as I'm shoveling. It's like I'm shoveling. It's like, oh, it goes down your neck and stuff. Oh, this is great fun. But he had a lot of fun, and that's a lot of it. I think it's just, sometimes we as parents aren't really enjoying the hell out of something, but we enjoy it for them or with them or enjoy it through them. Seeing that excitement when he looks out the window going, hey, it snowed. It's like, oh, God, it snowed. It's such a different point of view, But he had a lot of fun out there jumping around in the snow and raising havoc. And I would get done shoveling, and he would have run behind me about 15 different directions, and I'd have to reshovel the part that I just got done with because, he has no concept of it. But that's okay. It was a good time in for what it is. But anyway, I don't know. I guess that's about it off the top end. We're going to have a great show on Wednesday on the podcast. I got done recording today with the gentleman, and it was Andy Daly from the UK. It was just a great discussion he and I have had. Just a really neat guy. I like him. He's just got a really good energy, and his stories are fantastic and absolutely terrifying. Some of them absolutely amazing, others of them, and he's got a whole bucket full of them. But it was just really an exciting interview, and so I hope you guys check that out on Wednesday. That'll be Wednesday's podcast. So if you're not already subscribed to our podcast, please get subscribed. And you can do that on iTunes, iHeartRadio, or Pandora, or Spotify, or a bunch of other ones. I think Chatbox is one of them, or I know we're on most of them. Wherever you find podcasts from, we're on most of those. But I'm sure most of you are familiar with Pandora, Spotify, or iHeart, or iTunes. Those are the big four, I think. But anyway, we've been doing really good with the podcast, and you guys have been incredibly supportive. If you listen to the podcast and you like the podcast, then head over to iTunes, give us a good review, because it certainly goes a long way in getting our show recommended for other people as well. So it does serve a purpose. If you hate our show, then never mind. Don't bother. No, I mean, whatever. If you feel compelled to write a review, write whatever your review is. It's fine. It just, of course you hope everybody loves what you do. But anyway, speaking of what we're doing, I guess we're doing the night terrors. So I hope you're ready, because it's time for bed. And we're back at it, and that's it. That means we're officially underway here on the Paranormal Portal Night Terrors. We're going to get right into it. I got some stories pulled up for you to keep you hopefully plenty entertained as the night goes on. This Night Terrors episodes are roughly an hour-ish. They're in that hour range, so however long it takes. But it's hopefully a good lineup tonight of interesting stories. I have not pre-read these, so generally I'm reading them with you, and I do that on purpose because I like that as I'm reading them, I get the questions in real time in my head about what's going on, and then I can articulate what I'm thinking about these stories as they come up. Take it or leave it. It's just how I roll, but I do apologize in advance if I beat up any words. There's some pronunciations and words from around the nation that are a little tough to correctly vocalize for me. So I don't mean any disrespect if I ever come across a word or a name or some local reference to something, and I absolutely brutalize it. It's just how I roll. So let's get into this one. The first one tonight is coming from Rhode Island, and let's see what's going on there, because that's a pretty small place. So oh, okay. There is actually a picture involved in this one. So it's just a pretty square white house, though. It looks pretty unremarkable. So if it doesn't have any reference to spirit photo or something in it, then I'm probably not going to put it on screen, because there's just to show you a picture of a house is not really that not worth the effort. But anyway, it says, my wife, second wife now, married nearly 17 years, and I simply love this house. And the house is the Chase House in Portsmouth, Rhode Island. And the history of the house is this house once belonged to a Mr. John Chase Portsmouth, state representative. The house itself was valued at about $6,500. And the property it sits on is valued at about $1.6 million. What? Oh, okay. So apparently this man and his second wife absolutely love this house, even in the state it's in currently. 6 years ago, mid-fall, we had asked a friend to watch our kids and had gone out on a date night. And after dinner, as we drove around the island, Newport, Portsmouth, and Middletown Rhode Island are all located on an island, and we drove past the house, and it was about 11:30 p.m., and it was just something to do. And as we passed, we looked at each other and asked, Did you see?" And we kind of talked over each other because we had both seen what appeared to be a black door on the front of the house. And what's more, it looked like there were lights on either side of it. And I turned around and on a nearby street, and we returned to the house. Pulling up near it, we got out and walked towards the front door, hoping that someone had started restoring the old house. The shrubs and trees were still overgrown, but we could see the lights on either side of the door as we approached. And once fully in front of the house, we realized that the porch lights flickered as if they were gas lanterns, and the door was a glossy black door with a brass knocker and the windows on either side. And we stood there, more confused than scared, wondering why someone had started restoring like this. The front of the house, well, looked, well, not new, but well cared for, as if it had never fallen into disrepair. And we stood there thinking about knocking on the door and then decided not to because we needed to get home to the kids. And we left and drove off and talked about this all the way home. The one thing we both agreed on was that we had knocked. If we had knocked, we knew that someone would answer. We got home, paid the sitter, tucked the kids into bed, and went to bed ourselves. The next day, when we were out, we happened to be on the same road that the Chase house is on. And as we drove past, we noticed that the front was still all boarded up. Windows, door, all of it. No work had been done. There was no fresh paint, nothing. And we still talk about this every once in a while, and we're still both convinced that someone would have opened that door and asked us inside, but into where? And there's two pictures, what the house used to look like and what it currently looks like as of 2008. That to me sounds like a time slip, ladies and gentlemen, not really a ghost story. That's a time slip. That's and they're weird things like that. They're like these little doorways that people inadvertently can go into and I think normally come out. But here's the thing: you don't know how long they're going to last. You don't know if that gateway will always allow you to return, or if you've kind of got a window of opportunity. That would be absolutely kind of exciting and terrifying. And as much as I'd love to be the one to go knock on the door and go look through the house and see, what the people there would say and what that experience would be like, at the same time, you have to wonder, how long do you have? How long until there's no way back and you're kind of stuck in this other time? And who's going to believe your wild tale? And will you end up being in a padded cell in some lunatic asylum, which is what they called them back then, because nobody would believe that you're actually from a completely different time. And that's what's amazing to me. So when I think of things like time travel and stuff like that, and people's ambition to be able to time travel, and I think, is it really possible? And there's some people that speculate that absolutely it is not possible. But then you hear stories like this where there's some kind of natural formation or anomaly that's allowing time travel without the aid of any technology. So it must be possible then to artificially duplicate that and create that moment or that ability or that window, so to speak, in order to do it. And if you could, then you could, you would know that you had a way back. But, I think that it must be possible because the amount of these kind of stories out there is just incredible. There are lots of people talking about getting these glimpses into a completely different time, and it's traveling back in time. So, but wouldn't it be cool if you could do that? If you could go back and kind of like Back to the Future, visit your old relatives and give them a sports almanac and say, whatever you do, you got to hand this up through the generations and you got to get to Vegas. Because really, it would be the opportunity to rewrite your whole history. And then once you pop back, of course, your old Pinto is a Lamborghini or something, So I don't know. I don't know how that would work if that were to happen, but maybe it would create a paradox of sorts and create a different timeline altogether. But it's an interesting proposition. But I think that this is a time slip, ladies and gentlemen, and they do come up what happens here? I don't know. Why did they happen? Is there something about this property that made that happen, or is there just some right place, right time kind of thing, or is there some divine intelligence behind those moments that give people glimpses? I don't know. It's very curious though. But I do believe it's possible. I do believe it's possible to travel in time because for as many of these stories as we've covered, can they all be lying? Can every one of them be a lie? Could every one of them be a fabrication? I mean, obviously they can't all be true. They not there's no way. Through the course of doing this show, every story I represent to you guys is represented to me as a true story, whether it's the sources that I'm getting them from or the people that are relaying their stories. They're all represented as true stories. Now, I don't pretend that I can say that any of them are or all of them are, but I'm sure most of them are, or at least some of them are. With the ones that I find out in the wild on the web, those I don't know. But even then, if only, and I say this all the time, and I get redundant on the show, but if only 1% of these stories is absolutely true, and the rest of them are completely fabrications, then there's still something absolutely amazing going on out there. And I just don't believe they can all be lies. I like to believe that maybe more of them are factual than not, because of the many things I've experienced in my life, the many different phenomena that I've experienced when I'm reading these stories. In most cases, it's not a lot different than some of the things I've experienced. I don't think I've ever gone into the past or anything like that, but that one would be new to me. But I have seen spirits. I've dealt with spiritual situations for a long, long time. I've seen a UFO. I believe I had a really close encounter with a Sasquatch, and I know that those are real. I know those things really happened. And so as I read stories, it's not really hard for me to believe that these other people could be experiencing this stuff as well. In fact, it kind of feels good to know that other people are experiencing those things, because it would suck to be the only one. It's like, oh, it was only me. So I know that other people are experiencing things, and it does create a camaraderie of sorts. And it's nice to know. I mean, it's kind of like nobody can understand what it's like to have been in a really stressful situation unless someone else was in that situation as well. And then that person can relate to you on a level that other people just can't. It's hard to develop that kind of empathy that you can really understand the gravity of a situation you've never experienced. But other people that have experienced paranormal anomalies, of course, they can understand all those weird feelings that you go through when you're being presented with what is, quote unquote, the impossible. So I don't know, take it or leave it, but I think that's a pretty cool story, and I do believe that those things happen. Is this one true? Well, I don't know, but it doesn't. It's not saying anything that much more fantastical than dozens or hundreds of others that I've read. So it's possible. Let's go to the next one, and this is coming out of Texas. Let's see. How many are you guys? Are 49 of you in here. Fantastic. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad to see all you guys coming in. Good to see you, Cade and Duke's in here, of course, and Patrick and Barry and Linda and Nessie is here, D. Swiger, Pharmacy Seeds, Jeff, Moog, Gemini, Cade, Suzanne, Barry again. I'm just going through the chat as it pops by. But there's a bunch of you here. Thank you all for being here. And of course, chatting is not necessary. If you're just sitting back watching, that's cool too. But thank you. Hello, Lewis. Good to see you, brother. Glad you're here as well. Rachel Gets It Right is here. Big Rob is here. Deb's here. Cam, Ken, John, Brett, Deb again. There's the Duke again and D again. All right. So I didn't go through the participants list, but thank you all for being here. Everybody that is here, I appreciate it a bunch. Chatting is 100% necessary. Well, Cade, you got a pretty steep requirement curve on your participation here. It's always welcome. I love when people do chat, because it's great to be able to have a chance to hear from everybody watching, and that to me is fun, but not necessary. All right, is this real? From Texas. My story seems to take place wherever I go because I think I have a ghost following me. When I'm alone in my bed, I feel a presence in my room, and shadows are always moving. There isn't anything in my room or outside to cause the shadows to move, and they aren't moving erratically, but enough to have scared the living daylights out of me. Anyway, I can feel the ghost touch me. Oh God, here we go. Seductively, where and everywhere. It scared me at first, at the first time that it happened, but now oh God, now I kind of like it. Oh, I hate these stories. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, so I decided to look things up on Google, and the reasonable answer is an incubus. If this is a ghost, okay. But there's one problem. The incubus is supposedly only to prey upon sleepers in their beds. It's following me everywhere in school, at home, in the car. The list goes on. And I started wearing a cross recently. I found that the presence is farther away when I take the cross off, and when I have the cross on rather, I don't feel anything, no touching or presence. But also the incubus, or at least from what I've read, has had intercourse. I thankfully haven't had anything like that. Well, that's good because I wouldn't be reading it anymore if you did. Just seductive stroking and touching on my body. So, what I'm asking basically, is this real or in my imagination? I don't know, lady. I don't know what's real there. And granted, ladies and gentlemen, that stuff, I do believe it happens. I believe there are things like incubus and succubus, and I think that there are other things that may still try to create that kind of response that are not incubus and succubus. But I don't like to cover them on this show because I always want this show to be a family friendly show, and it's not that I don't believe that goes on, but it's just like there's some experiences that I don't know. I just don't want to give them a forum on this show because it changes everything. It changes the whole vibe, and it creates a weirdness that I just don't want to go down on the portal. So my apologies to anybody who feels that may be selective coverage of the paranormal, but it's my show and that's the way I'm going to roll it. So I'm sure there's other channels that'll be happy to cover that for you, but this isn't one of them. So this one's coming from New York, and it's about the devil himself. Ooh. So this story takes place about 9 years ago when I was 15 years old. My cousins and I were young and stupid, and I say stupid because of the trouble we caused, and decided we would dabble in witchcraft. Well, we all went out to the store buying a spell book, candles, an altar, everything. We drew a pentagram on the back of an old mirror and used that in the place where we would cast our spells. Little did we know, we drew the pentagram upside down and allowed negative spirits to pass through. After about 3 months of playing with this pentagram, we all started to have occurrences in that house. I would spend the night there every weekend, and we would wake up in the morning to brush my hair and see a little girl in the mirror behind me. Let me inform you that this house was not haunted prior to our dabbling. My cousin stated she had seen a young man, a little girl, a little boy, and a dog in the mirrors of her house. And we never thought anything of it because, hey, old houses are sometimes haunted. We never thought any of them were harmful, so we weren't afraid of them, and we would sit in her room and end up in the living room listening to her parents talk and never leave the room. Well, after we started getting creeped out, my cousin, whom we will call Lynn, would wake up with gouges and scratches on her back, only to have them disappear when we would approach someone else about it. These were the minor occurrences. Little did we know things were about to get worse. One night after getting home late from our friend's house, we came home to an empty house, so figuring her parents maybe went out, like they sometimes went out for the night, and we made nothing of it. Well, the house was freezing cold, like there was no heat coming from anything. Might I mention it was the middle of summer, and we knew something just wasn't right. We immediately had the feeling of dread, and not going to lie, we were scared out of our minds, and we sat on the porch until her parents came outside and asked what we were doing outside. Her parents were home the whole time. Weird, right? I don't know. It doesn't sound that weird. It gets worse. We went in the house, and the images we were seeing on the mirrors started showing their true colors. Their eyes were glowing red, and they were turning all black. These things were in every mirror in the house. We finally realized that our dabbling, we had let out a demon into the house and had no idea we were going to get it out, how we were going to get it out. Her mother just looked at us and asked, "What did you do?" We then knew we were in over our heads, and well, this went on for 2 months before we figured out a plan. We abandoned all our stuff only to find it back in the trunk of the car. The next step was to burn it. We burned everything and prayed as we did this. The smoke was so black you couldn't see anything through it. We hoped that worked. Well, it did, to the point we closed the portal demons were entering through, but did not remove them from the house. We then knew we had to get an exorcism of the house. My cousin's house is right next to a cemetery, and we decided we needed to pray, so we went into the chapel and prayed to God for him to help us and told him we were so sorry for what we had done. On our way out, we noticed the 2 angels guarding the doors, and we began crying. It scared the crap out of us. But we also felt a sense of calm and knew that everything was okay, or at least was going to be okay. We went back to the house, and my aunt had bought the 3 of us gold crosses to wear and a Bible, and we got in touch with a priest who happened to be a friend of my mom's, and he agreed to bless the house. Well, this worked, and we have not had another bad experience yet, and are happy as can be. I am more in touch with my faith and will not look back. Yeah, that's some poor planning there. Yeah. Can those things go sideways? I think using the term witchcraft, I don't think is really fair, because I think that automatically people draw a parallel with witchcraft and Satanism, and that certainly couldn't be further from the truth. In most cases, witchcraft is just a natural methodology more than anything. It's not necessarily a traditional religion in the traditional sense. It's a spiritual practice, kind of like Buddhism isn't really a religion. It's just a way of life. And so in a lot of ways, that's what true witchcraft is. But it's sensationalized through a lot of different sources that have made witchcraft mean Satanism and Satan worship, and that's really not the case. But anyway, I'm no expert, just as I understand it. Take it or leave it. This one's coming from New York, and it has to do with a Native American spirit, apparently. It says, I was eating breakfast at my table at about 7:30. I took a spoonful and then looked out of my window. And we have a big swing on my porch, and I saw it swinging. And when I looked up, I saw an Indian. But I didn't notice it at first. So I looked away, and when I realized what I had seen, I looked back and it was gone, but the swing was still swinging. It was bizarre. The Indian was kind of blurry, and I could see one side clearly, but I couldn't see his face. And after I told my sister, who grew up in the house, and she later told me that the whole road is haunted. She and my brother can sense spirits, but they choose not to block it out. And I've had other experiences, but I will share those later. My experience was indeed scary, but I need to know what I've experienced. If anyone can give me some information, I'd be really pleased. My sister and brother believe that the road used to be a Dutch trading ground, and they have many, many experiences, and I will share them later. There's an email and contact information. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to know what you experienced. You looked up and saw an apparition. Is it a hallucination? Is it a real thing? I don't know. Not sure. This one's Missouri, or Missouri. Let's see what's going on there. It says, so about a couple of days ago, maybe weeks now, my baby cousin Peyton died. Oh, that's horrible. She was born a couple of weeks before, And now this is kind of expected because of the shape she was in. Late birth, diagnosed with leukemia. They had to feed her through a tube that they placed in her nose because she couldn't swallow because it caused her pain. She had a heart and lung problems, and even if she had lived through it, she would have had lived a miserable life. She died, and we went up to the cemetery where her funeral was taking place. They were lowering her into the hole, and we took a moment of silence. And in that moment, I heard a small noise. I could hardly make it out, but it sounded like that gibberish a small child would speak. I thought nothing of it until we were on our way home, and I heard it again in the car. I was sleepy at the time, so I thought that it was just my mind playing tricks on me, so I took a nap through the 2-hour car ride. We get home, and I asked my older brother if he heard the same thing, and he said he might have, but he wasn't sure. I released the thought and went upstairs, and I'm walking up to my room when I hear it again, and I again release it and head to my room. I lie down on the bed and eventually fall asleep in my clothes. Around 1 or 2, I wake to the sound of a baby crying. It sounded exactly like Peyton, the time they had to insert the food tube into her nose. I get up to change into my pajamas, and the room is pitch black, and I'm not kidding when I say I can't see a thing. Now, I've never felt safe at all in my room, or anywhere in the house for that matter, but as soon as I step off the grounds of the house, I feel safe and at ease. A couple of people have died in the house, so I already know it's haunted. I rise from my bed and walk about 2 feet and stop because I feel some kind of presence in front of me, and the crying stops. I reach my lamp and turn it on. I wipe my eyes, and I see a small child with a broken food tube in her nose, blonde hair and blue eyes, crying in the middle of the floor. That's so sad. I take a step towards the child, and the vision vanishes. I think it might have been my mind playing tricks on me, but for about 2 or 3 times a week now, I'll wake up to the sound of a baby crying, but only once have I seen my baby cousin, Peyton, lying on the floor crying. What do you think it is? Well, I don't know. Those are the tough ones. I mean, could it be the spirit of the little infant? If the child was that young, I can't imagine that it would linger intentionally. I just don't think it would have that understanding. I don't know. I don't even know what to say to that. That's one of those really sad stories it's hard to put any kind of rationale to it. It seems to me it's probably something else mimicking, if anything, just for whatever reason, but I don't know. That's just horribly tragic. Anything having to do with a child, a little infant dying, is just so sad. This one is Alabama. So let's see what's going on in Alabama. Yeah, it really is Gemini. That's terrible. Terribly sad. I mean, those little gentle angels. Ugh. All right, so this is another occurrence from me from one of my previous places of employment. It was a Tuesday, and I was training the new dispatchers and officers on the fire alarm system. And I would go floor to floor, activating different points to see how the dispatchers and officers would respond. Anyway, to the point, the place was deserted except for security and a few other employees in the basement. Everything was going like clockwork, so I thought I would throw a monkey wrench into their efforts by activating an obscure point in the kitchen. I got off the service elevator in the kitchen and noticed that housekeeping had just recently finished mopping the floor, but as it was still wet. With my ribs still sore from my previous experience, which I don't know what they're talking about, and not wanting to slip and bust my butt, I was being very careful watching where I stepped. As I was making my way to the back of the kitchen, I saw footprints on the floor, and now this would not pique any interest in me except that for the fact that the footprints were made by bare feet. Now, by now you all know that I'm a curious cat, so of course I had to follow them to see who was walking around barefoot in the kitchen. Well, I followed them towards a salad station, and as I turned the corner, I saw the footprints forming on the wet floor. Nobody was in the kitchen but me, yet I was watching the footprints walk across the floor, and at first I thought it was a trick of the water drying, but the floor was still wet. No drying action. And I followed them across the kitchen and watched them basically pass through or under a long station where the plates are stored and prepared, and to a row of deep fryers where they disappeared. Other than surprise and curiosity, I didn't feel anything during this experience, and I think it might have been a residual occurrence as it didn't interact with anything. What do you all think? Please feel free to email me about this or any other experiences. Thanks for reading. I don't know, that's weird. I suppose, disembodied footsteps can be residual, and I suppose that could be visual as well, a residual visual. But yeah, it's very strange for sure. Let's see what the next one is. This is coming from Wyoming. Well, this sounds pretty dark. It's not real long. It's about a medium length story, but it says it was days ago and the event took place outside of my apartment bathroom door. I was sitting on the toilet, sorry to say, and I was thinking, as people often do, about random thoughts, such as planning to start a new life, working hard at my job, talking to someone I haven't seen for some time, just basic daydreaming. And it was about 3 a.m. in the morning, and being as how I'm young and I was off work the next day, I stayed up to watch movies and think of what plans I have into tomorrow. And as I was sitting there with my mind off in the distance, my eyes zoned out on an old robe hung from the wall in front of me. I then felt a slight chill to my body, and it happens every so often, but I only take notice. It never seemed odd. And when I was finishing taking care of my business, I waited a few more seconds to bear my thoughts, and I heard motion coming from down my hallway, and then the swift sound of wind. My doorknob, I kid you not, started to slowly move, not back and forth, but in and out like this door was being opened. Whatever was on the other side could not turn the knob first. I halted all thoughts, all actions, and my eyes grew wider. I stared deep into the door for a moment, and shivers went up my spine. Why? Because my roommates are newlyweds, and they left the house about an hour before, and they went to drink, and I knew they were not back. I had a little lights on in the apartment, and I didn't have any fans going. I had no noise. And then I heard some kind of god-awful breathing on the door. It was close, really close to the door. And I'm not exaggerating this story. It was breathing like it had holes in its lungs, and as though it had no lips, and the sound came out as like it was breathing and smelling the air at the same time. Surely whatever this was could have entered regardless of a simple wooden door, but it did not. It was huffing and wheezing outside the door, and I recall the feeling of this creature moving from a tall standing point to a low lying down on the bottom of the door where it meets the floor. My heart was racing. My head was pulsating with my heart, and I had a huge adrenaline rush. I could hear my heartbeat and every other noise around me. And I froze. This odd event lasted about 10 seconds. Not long, but long enough that I slowly stood up and put my hands in my pockets and waited by the door for several minutes before opening it. And when I did finally leave, I was nearly in tears with the thought that I was being hunted. And my hands, for the first time that I recall, were trembling. I could not stop them, and they were so shaky, it was just beyond me. This apartment I live in has nothing of value or any background stories, and this thing has followed me home. I'm a hiker, climber, nature photographer, bleh, and a caver, and I respect that could be a higher being of light, but I'm not, however, religious. I cannot explain why this event took place, but I do believe it is still here with me, and it wanted to harm me. I am in pursuit of this creature now. What do you believe this all means, and what is it? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why this person thinks it's a creature, or does it think it's a spirit? I don't know. I would assume it's a spirit kind of thing, but very odd. Huh. You know, we see those videos of things like, for instance, if you're ever on YouTube looking at paranormal stuff for any length of time, and you look up cryptids and cryptid beings, you'll see these lizard-like things running through these sewers or something, and something subterranean. It's definitely man-made, whatever it is that they're running through. But I always find those videos really intriguing because honestly, people in urban areas, people in suburban areas, people in rural areas, we don't really observe our surroundings very dedicatedly. We for the most part, we're in a tunnel. We have this tunnel vision, and I think that we could have things like this living all around us. These little beings, and if there were things living in sewers that were undiscovered, it wouldn't surprise me even a little, because people just don't, as a rule, pay attention a whole lot to what's going on around them. And that's not a dig. It's not me poking fun at people or anything. It's just that our lives are geared ever forward, ever, into at this incredibly with this incredibly chaotic space and pace. And we don't notice what's around us. And these things, of course, if they are indeed cryptids and not spiritual, then they're very good at what they do, and they are probably acutely aware of their surroundings at all times because they want to remain hidden. And so, whether there's that much intelligence going on here or not, I don't know. Why does this person believe something followed them home? I don't know. But they must have some reason for it. That didn't seem to be outlined in that story that they submitted. But whatever the case is, that's awfully creepy stuff. Let me just look at the time here and see what we got going on. Oh, it's 42. So we still got some time. We still got about almost 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. So we got time for some more. Let's see what we can get into in these last few minutes of the show. They go fast, ladies and gentlemen, but that's how the portal rolls. It's just before you know it, it's time to wrap up the shop. But not yet. I got some more stories here for you, so don't go anywhere. This one's coming from Oregon, and said somewhere about 20 years ago, I was a newly married guy renting this really old house. It was supposedly built in 1906, though I can't verify it. I do know it had single heating vent in the center of the living room floor, and it was probably about 3 feet square, as I recall, and it was cast iron. And directly below the vent was the old oil heater located in the unfinished basement. About once a week, my new bride and I would hear a clang, from the heating vent. I originally wrote it off as regular expansion and contraction of the metal, but we noticed that when it would happen, it was always at the same time, 1 a.m. I could replicate the sound by standing on it and then shifting my weight and making the metal vent rock in place a tiny bit. So the how of it was answered, but that opened up the who question. Who was walking through our living room at 1 in the morning? One night it happened, I happened to be awake and watching television in the living room when the vent rocked and made that sound. The oft-mentioned cold zone moved past me as well. So I knew it was a ghost. I never did see anything, though. A few months later, a friend of ours moved in to the finished attic. About a week later, he came screaming down the stairs, saying that someone was up there. He described a man who was about 50-ish, balding, attired in average everyday clothes. There was nothing unique about him, really, who was floating over his bed, staring down at him with a look of curiosity. Well, I made the assumption that he just wanted to know who this new person living in the house was. Nothing bad had ever happened while we lived there, so I wasn't really concerned about it. But our friend moved out shortly after that, though. And this is a long time before the internet, and I really didn't want to go through the piles of paper at the library trying to find out who this man was, so I just forgot about it. I'd search for it now, but I don't even remember the address. Just thought I'd share the story and let you know that not all spirits are mad or vengeful. Some are just curious. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think that's, hauntings, of course, take us by surprise. They really hit us sideways because they are the manifestation of events that shouldn't be possible by our Western thinking. So when something extraordinary like a haunting happens, it takes us off of our balance point. It takes us into a whole different place, emotionally and mentally and even spiritually. So often our reaction to these kind of events is fear. It's fearful. Like, what the hell just happened? How did that happen? That's not possible. And so initially, I think our initial reaction is fear, and then it's helplessness because something happened that seems beyond us. It seems to be an event that is beyond us, and we feel weak, and we feel perhaps even powerless and vulnerable. And I think that for the most part, these hauntings are not negative. They are just, I believe, the attempts of these beings that for some reason or another happen to be either trapped or residing in the same space as you are, and they just want some kind of recognition. They want some kind of acknowledgement, and I think that simply acknowledging them can be really powerful. And I brought up this reference to a story we covered a long time ago, many times, but I think it's a very powerful example of how to mitigate that kind of experience. And what was going on was there was an apartment that a gentleman rented with his roommate, and they had these outlandish, bizarre things going on, and some very active haunting going on. And they tried the whole priest blessings and stuff, and nothing helped, and they were kind of just stuck with it. And they had paranormal groups come through, and of course that generally steers things or stirs things up rather than calming anything down. A side note: most paranormal groups are looking to capture evidence. They're not, always geared towards your best interests. So bear that in mind and make sure if you have somebody come into your space that you vetted them to some degree, because you want to bring in people that are going to be really tuned into your best interest. But anyway, they were kind of stuck with this situation and didn't know what to do with it. So they decided to name this ghost, and I think they named him George, and it became part of their ritual. When one of them would come home, is, "Hey George, I'm home," and then take a couple minutes and sit at the kitchen table and just say, "Oh, I had a hell of a day," and talk about the day and blah blah blah, whatever. Now, obviously, George never answered back or anything, but that simple acknowledgement created that or caused that haunting to go from very aggressive and very active to almost non-existent. And it was like that spirit just wanted to be recognized and acknowledged and not dismissed. And I think they are in a space most times because that space was important to them. And having that dialogue, I think, is very powerful. It doesn't have to be exactly like that, but I think just having a dialogue like, "Hey, I know you're here. Let me know if there's some way you can let me know your name. That'd be great. But otherwise, I'm going to call you this. And here's the rules. I'm okay with you being here, but this, and this, and never this, and this." And 90% of the time or better, people notice that their situations get a hell of a lot better. So I don't know if that's an answer or not, but it does seem to be a technique that works. But it depends on you, the individuals. If you can live with a potential spiritual entity in your space, and that's okay with you, then cool, make it work. But if you can't and you need to either get out of that space or get the thing out of that space, and I don't mean thing dismissively, I just mean the being, get them out of your space, then I guess you got to do that too. I don't have the answers for everybody, but just some ideas that might help if anybody out there is dealing with a tough situation. But it's pretty bizarre. I will say this though, that if anybody out there is really suffering in a bad situation with a lot of crazy activity going on, and you need some help understanding what's going on in your situation, reach out to me on the show, because we do have people that are a part of the show in one way or another and have offered their services. to help people dealing with, really aggressive situations and even not aggressive situations. If it's just making your life hard and uncomfortable, let us know. And we can get you in touch with somebody. Hopefully you can help. And it's not that somebody has to come to your home. These are generally they reach out in a psychic sense and are able to read the situation and help you understand what's going on. So it's just an option for those of you who may, for whatever reason, be interested. Okay, so we're going to move on here. And, by the way, that's all pro bono, too. They do accept donations, but it's not a charge kind of deal. If you can't pay, you can't pay. They're still going to help you either way. I'm so dry. My God. I ever tell you how much I love winter air? I do. All right, so let's go to the next one here. Let me check the time. I end up getting in my soapbox and burning a bunch of time, I'm sure. I talk, and the next thing I know, I guess we have time for this. Yeah, this one is holy hella long. Never mind. We don't have time for that one because that's going to be about a 15-minute one all by itself. But this one, this one we got time for. Let me read this one, and this will be the last one for the night tonight, ladies and gentlemen. So one more story, and this is coming from New York. I just wanted to share my story. Maybe you guys can help me figure out what I experienced. I'm a bit of a skeptic, but at the same time, I'm a big part of me believes in the paranormal. I don't know if that even makes sense. Well, kind of does. This happened to me back where I grew up. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with my parents in Manhattan. Hey, Taco, how you doing? I just see you've highlighted my name for some reason, so how you doing? New York, and just to give you an idea of the place, this is the layout of my apartment. We had 2 doors to the outside. One opened to a small waiting area, and the other opened to the kitchen. And we just used the door to the kitchen a lot more than the other one. And when you come in, there's a hallway to the other side of the kitchen, and my room was in the middle to the right of the hallway. Then came the living room and then my parents' room. So basically, they had to go through the hallway and pass my room to get to their room. Anyways, I was 17 years old at the time and used to stay home alone sometimes on the weekends. My parents used to go to Atlantic City and sometimes they would stay for the whole weekend. It was a Saturday night, and unlike other weekends, I went to bed kind of early, around 2:30 a.m. I heard the door in the kitchen open and close, and then I heard some voices but couldn't understand what they were saying, almost as if they were talking low so I wouldn't wake up, but I could still hear them. And then I heard very clear footsteps in the hallway right outside my room. These steps were going in the direction to my parents' room, so I figured they came home early, and I waited in bed for my mom to come in and check on me like she did every night before she would go to sleep. When she didn't show up in my room, I decided to see if they were okay, and to my surprise, my parents' room was empty, so I went looking in all the rooms for them, and nothing. Well, at this point, I'm getting a little scared, and I thought that someone broke in and was hiding somewhere in the house. I was standing in the middle of my kitchen when all of this is going through my head, so I grabbed my mom's rolling pin. I don't know what made me do this. I guess I thought I was so brave back then, and I turned every light on in my house, opened every door, looked in every closet and corner to find this intruder, but nothing. I was completely home alone. By then it was already 3 a.m. or so, and I was pissed because I should have been in bed. I decided to call my parents and ask them what time they were coming home, and they said they were about an hour away, so I went back to my room and was watching some television waiting for them to get home so I can tell them my story when out of nowhere, I see this shadow on the wall in front and away from my bed. It looked as if someone was standing in my doorway, which was left of the bed, and making this shadow on the wall. I closed my door to see if it was something in the hallway doing this, but the shadow was still there. I could only see the shadow, shoulders and head, and not a body, but I got closer to touch it, and I felt this cold wall but the shadow was still there all the time. And I really thought that there was something not paranormal making the shadow, and that's why I was crazy enough to touch it. I turned to my phone to call my mom, and when I looked to the wall again, the shadow had moved to the other end of the wall, closer to my bed, and right at the foot of it. That's when I grabbed my keys and my cell phone and I left. I waited for my parents on the steps right outside of the building. And when they got home, I told them what had happened, but they didn't know what to make of it. I think they believed me, but didn't really want to say anything. Could it just have been my imagination, or maybe I had a paranormal experience? This has been my question for many years now. Yeah, the whole shadow thing is creepy. I don't know. Again, the shadow stories come up a lot. And what are they? I don't know. Some people say that shadow beings are very malevolent, and others say that they can be even malevolent or at least benign. And maybe they can be all those things. I don't know. But they come up all the time, and they don't seem to be the same thing as a normal haunting or ghost kind of thing. They seem to be something else, whatever they are. And maybe there's a whole spectrum of them. Maybe there's the jerks, and then there's the nice ones. Who knows? I've heard lots of theories through the years, and I don't know enough to have any solid opinion. So, anyway, I guess that's going to do it, though, ladies and gentlemen. Whatever those shadow people are, they seem to be pretty much everywhere, and what they want, I don't even know. But I will tell you, I believe some of them are really dark and evil and do feed off of people. I think there are some that are something else, and maybe they're just another kind of thing. I don't know. But I hope you guys have a wonderful Tuesday. Thank you all for being here and being a part of the Paranormal Portal family. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the kindness and support. I'm getting lots of emails, lots of people reaching out to the show, and through one of the social media or another, or just via email. And it's really cool to be able to talk to some of you guys. And thanks to those of you who are leaving comments on the videos. I appreciate that for the most part. There's usually, most of them are actually pretty nice. But every once in a while, there's a jerky one, but that's par for the course, especially on YouTube. So, but I guess that's going to wrap it up for us here tonight. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. I'll be back tomorrow night with more of the night terrors here on the YouTube channel. Every night, 7 days a week, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. There's a portal going on, so whatever 7 p.m. Pacific Time means to you, but just basically it's 8 now here, so about an hour ago. Translate that to your time zone, and I should be here or right thereabouts. So I love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. And if you haven't seen the Golden Globes monologue yet with Ricky Gervais, oh my God, I watched that last night after I got on with my own show. I for the most part, ladies and gentlemen, I'd rather scrub my refrigerator than look at one of those dumb award shows. But I heard about it, so I went and found clips of it online, and oh my God, it was about the funniest damn thing I've ever seen. And there's so many mortified people sitting in that room, and it was great because he went totally scorched earth on him. It was hilarious. Oh my God, the look on some of those celebrities' face was just like, they just couldn't believe it. It was like Ricky Gervais turned into the new Will Rogers. And if you don't know who Will Rogers is, he was a old comedian back in the way old days, like in the 20s and stuff. And he would roast the hell out of whoever he was performing for. Like, and he always got called by these politician groups and banker groups, and he'd get up there on stage and call them all crooks and liars and stuff, and they'd be laughing about it. It was kind of like what Ricky Gervais did last night on the Golden Globes. It was absolutely brilliant, but if you're not familiar with it, you should get familiar with it. It's so awesome. It was such a wonderful thing. And here's the thing. One of the things I think that perturbs me the most of the whole Hollywood part of our society is that for some reason they have these ideas that if they pretend to be these people, they pretend to say these words, and they pretend to do these things, that they get this whole idea that somehow they're important and they're amazing in that they have this unique take on life that is so much better than the common people that they should tell us how to think. And I think that that is about the most condescending thing that I've ever heard. It's like, people are intelligent, people are smart. They can figure this stuff out on their own. And, if people do wait to hear what their celebrities have to say in order to know what to think, then they got all kinds of other problems. But it's just that hubris that goes along with that whole Hollywood thing that really irritates me. It's like, I love to watch you pretend to be stuff, but don't pretend, that you're suddenly so dialed in on the rest of life. You get a living by pretending. And I used to do that when I was a little kid. But I guess right now I'm pretending to be a show host, but we'll see how that all works out. But anyway, the Ricky Gervais thing was hilarious. Just check it out if you haven't seen it. I'll be back tomorrow night with more of the Night Terrors, 7 p.m. again. So I guess that's about it, everybody. Have a wonderful night. Have a great day tomorrow, and sweet dreams.